Hello everyone and welcome back. In today's video, we're going to dive into the world of Spring Batch and learn how to build a batch processing application in Spring Boot. Spring Batch is a really powerful framework that simplifies the process of building batch applications in Spring Boot. Now, if you're excited for this video, kindly smash that like button right now to get the dopamine up. And if you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, please consider doing so. Having said that, let's get started with our tutorial. Okay, so now the first thing we need to do is to set up a new Spring Boot project, and the quickest way to do it is by visiting this website, start.spring.io, and here we can generate a quick Spring Boot project and build on top of it. Now, I have already set up mine with this following configurations, and basically I'm using Gradle, and then the language is Java, Java version 17 and this basic project metadata. Now, this is not really too important. The most important part is this dependencies section. Here I have added a few dependencies, and the most important one amongst them is the Spring Batch. So to build a batch application, this Spring Batch dependency is a must. So the other ones are complementary dependency depending on the goal of your project, provided that is if you need them. So in my case, I've added Spring Web, I've added Spring Data JDBC because of I'll be doing some database interactions, and I've added Postgres as well because I'll be using Postgres. And also, I wanted to note this Docker Compose support is a new dependency, a new support in Spring Boot version 3.1.1. So if you're using any version of Spring Boot um, lower than 3.1.1, you won't have this support. So you need to be using this one, the latest version, and I'm using that so I can make use of the new feature, which is the Docker Compose support. And also, I've added Flyway migration to manage our database schema. So basically, this is the entire dependencies for this demo. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to generate this project and load it up in IntelliJ. So see you there. Our project all set up in IntelliJ. Let me show you what we have here. So basically, it's our Spring Boot project that we bootstrapped from the start.spring.io website, and I've made a few modifications to this project already. So I'm going to show you what I've done so far. Now, in this SRC main package here, we have the Java and the resource folders packages, and in the resource packages, I have changed this application.properties file to application.yaml. It's easier to work with YAML files. And also I've added this employees.csv file. So this is a file. Let me show you it. This is the file. This file contains a list of employees and some information about those employees. So basically, this is going to be the file that we're going to be reading from. Our batch application will be reading from this file and then processing this data and saving it in our applications database. Okay. So now, let me show you the rest of the application. And we are using Flyway. So if you look at the build.gradle here, in the dependencies section, we have Flyway. Okay, so because we have Flyway, this db.migration folder is created. This is where you will place your database schemas, and then Flyway will track them for you. So inside of that folder, I've already placed one migration schema. So I'm gonna open it up and show it to you. So it's just one SQL script that is responsible to create for us our employees table. So the table that will be responsible to hold this information that we have in this CSV file when we save it to our database. So it has similar columns. So the same columns we have here, I just created the same things. And yeah, this is the SQL file. This is going to be our table that will be created in our Postgres database. Okay, so we are using Postgres for this demo, so you can see that here, Postgres, and also we're using the Docker Compose support, this dependency that is very necessary when you are developing your Spring Boot application. It helps you to quickly bootstrap your your resources. So in our case, the resource we have is Postgres. So we need a database which is of type Postgres, and this composed of YAML file, we can define our Postgres database container instance here, and then once we start our application, the framework will automatically apply this configuration here. It will automatically put up the containers for us. So you don't need to do docker compose or dash d. No, you just need to write your services in here like you would do in a regular docker compose file, and then the framework will pick it up automatically as long as you have this dependency in your class path. All right. Now, the next thing I've done in this project so far is that I've created some few packages, and I have the batch package here, which is empty for now, and also have this domain package. So basically, this like our entity is like the Java representation of our table. So you can see here I've added the necessary annotations from Lombok, and I also added the table annotation from Spring Data. Okay, so you can see here is from Spring Framework Data Relational Core Mapping Table. Okay, so I've added this one here to map our table that we have defined inside of the schema here. So this table name, I've mapped it to this class, and I've set the ID, which is of type UID, and then put in the necessary properties, the attributes. Also for this class, I've set up the repository. It's just a simple repository. Just extend the CRUD repository and annotate it with the repository annotation. That's all for this one. Nothing complex. So it's pretty straightforward. Now, I I will also I also have this demo controller we have here, and I've created this controller. This is gonna be the controller that'll be responsible for starting our job from an outside, let's say from by an endpoint, calling an endpoint. So I've created this endpoint called slash batch slash start. So when a user call this endpoint, the batch job should be triggered. So I will create a batch service that will have some methods in it, like this method that I have here, start job, and it will automatically kickstart the batch job. So this is not existing now. So we'll create this together. I didn't want to create this, behind you because there's some things in here I wanted to explain to you while we create it. So I just, took the connection and we'll create the class later. All right. So this is all that we have so far. Now we'll go ahead and start to build the batch application and see it in action. Start by creating the batch config. So I'll create a new class. It will be a Java class, and I'll call it batch config. All right. Now this class will be a configuration class because it will hold some configuration. We'll define in it some beans. So I will annotate this with configuration, and I'll also add the require as constructor from Lombok. Now the first bean I want to define here is the bean that will be responsible for reading the data from our data source, that is from where we're taking the information from that we want to process. So there are several ways that you can read data. You can read data from a file. You can read data from a link, like you have URL from a website endpoint. You can read data from that. You can read data from several other places. So since in our case we'll be reading data from a file, which is this file that I've placed right here, the CSV file, we need to define a bin of type flat file item reader. Okay, so there are several kinds of item readers. The one we'll be using is the flat file item reader. So I'm going to define that bin right now, and it's going to be of type flat file item reader. So now this flat file item reader is going to read from a file, but it is also a generic. It takes a type that it will use to map the item that it's going to read from it's going to read some list of items and then map it to a Java object. So the Java object that I've created to represent that is the one that I have here. Typically, in a real, maybe in a more advanced type application, you will create a DTO to hold that information, but I will just use the same object that I'm using as the entity. So the domain object here, employee, will be the one that we use to map the information that we read from the file, the CSV file, into the class. Okay, so I'm gonna put employee here, and then I'm just gonna call it employee file item reader, something like this. Employee file item reader. So tab 9 is here suggesting the name for me, which is cool. Now I will open it up like this and return an instance of the new file item reader of type employee, and then I will close it like this because it's a constructor. And now we use the builder pattern to build the object. All right, so I'll firstly put that build like so to kind of close the whole thing. And am I spelling this right? Okay, so now I will have to specify a few things. So firstly we need to get a name. What am I doing wrong? We need the flat file item reader, reader builder. We need the builder so that we can use the builder pattern. Okay, I was just calling the flat file item reader, and that's why it does not recognize this. So we need the builder for that. So just add builder, and it should be fine. Now we can now build the object. So we first need to pass it a name, and the name could be anything you desire. So I'm just gonna call it employee item reader, and then next we need to provide the source. Okay, where can it find the file that it needs to read? So you can pass it any type of folder. So you're gonna pass it you could pass it a folder path or a class path. So since in our case I'm having our file directly inside this this resources folder, it's going to be a class path resource. So I'm just going to direct it to look directly inside the resource folder and find the file. But you could direct it to a file server that you have somewhere, and it will, go there and find the file, read it, and bring it data. All right. So in our case, I'm just making it simple and just putting the file right inside the same application. But typically, it will be stored in a file server. All right. So let's just use it as it is. I will just define a new class path resource and then specify the name of the file, which is employee, I think with an S, dot CSV. Now I've defined where this flat file item reader can find the CSV file that we need. And also next thing we need to set a delimiter. So the default is a comma, so just keep it like that, delimited. Not description, is delimited like so. And then we need to also define the names of the columns that are inside of the file. All right, so when I open this CSV file, by the way, it's a CSV file, so you see it's a comma separated file. So the default delimiter is the comma. This is what it will use to define to distinguish the columns. So I need to first specify these titles, the column names, in the next configuration here. So I need to pass the column names. So the first one is first name, first with space, not like this, but it should be names, I guess. Yeah, names. So this delimited object, you need to pass in the columns names to it. So that's why I was given that red thing first. So now we have the names. Inside the names, we can pass in a list of, of strings that will represent the names of the columns. All right. So let me see if I can do this. Okay, and I will close this, and then we can have some room. Now I will just type in the column names in the string thing. So first name, is the first one. The second one is gonna be a string also. Last name. Shout out to Tab9 for that. And we have phone, email first before phone. And then we have the phone, and we have also the gender, and the next one is department, and the next one, scroll up, we have the job title. So after department we have job title, and we also have the years of experience. Okay, after years of experience we have the salary, which is the last one, salary. Awesome. So I'm gonna close this file now so that we can have some more. So now we've defined the column names here. Next thing to do is to instruct the file item reader to skip the first row. Okay, because the first row is just having the columns names and it's not having any information. So we don't want to read that one. We just want to skip it. So to do that, just use the lines to skip, and you just do the index of the line to skip, which is 1. Now, after that, we need to define a feed set mapper. So the feed set mapper. So this is the thing that will map the data from the CSV file, each cell, to a specific attribute inside of the object that we define here, that we specify in this file item reader. So we now need to bring in a new bean wrapper. So we need a bean wrapper feed mapper, this first one here, and this will it will take an object like this, and then we will set the target type. So the target class is the employee class, so we set target type, and then we will pass in the employee dot class, like so. So this piece of code right here will be responsible for mapping the data we read from the CSV file and then convert it to the employee's object. All right. So now we have finished setting up our item reader, which in this case is a flat file item reader because we're reading a flat file. So we are good in with this one. So next I'll show you how to set the item processor. Okay. Okay, so now that we have configured correctly our item reader, let's now define the item processor. So for that, you can also, normally I see some people, they define a bin for that, but what I like to do is to define a special class for that, because the item processor is like the service of the batch. Okay, it is responsible for applying all the logic that you need to perform to the data once you read them. So I like to put it in a separate class and then have that logic written there. So I'll define a class and I will call it employee item processor, like so. It's gonna be a component, and so that means I will have to define it. I need to add the add component annotation, like so. And this class it needs to implement the item processor interface so that it can have the functionality of an item processor. All right, so I will implement the item processor. And the item processor, if you look at the snippet here, it has an input and an output. So it's going to take an input and then process it and returns an output. So we need to define that the types of the input and the output. All right, so in our case we will be expecting employee as the input, an object of type employee, and then the output that we'll be sending out could be any type of output that you define. All right, so since we are just having one simple use case, I'm going to be saying that we will just return back as output an employee. All right, so now we have done this. We need to import this class like so, and then next thing we need to do is to implement the methods of that item processor, and we have just one method that we need to implement. So this is the process. Now that we have this method, we need to write the logic, okay, the implementation of it. So basically this is where you will write out all your processing logic, do some things that you need to do according to your business requirement, and then return the output, which will be of type whatever type you specify here. So in our case it's employee. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to log out something. So for that I'll add the at SL4G annotation, and this will give us the login instrumentation that we can use to log. So I'll do log dot info, and I'll just write processing employee, and then I'll pass in the name of the employee. All right, the first name and the last name. Then I'll just pass that information like so. I'll grab it from the item, dot get name, not get name, item dot get first name, because that's what we have in this employee object, and then item dot get last name, just like so. All right, so basically this is just to simulate a type of processing. All right, and if like you can put a timer here to delay, the delay for a second or millisecond or so, but I'm not going to do that. So after that I'll just return the process object, which will be the employee item. All right, so this is our simple processing logic, just to give you an idea how it works. But you could do a whole lot in here. You could do a lot of things in this implementation. So with this being set up, all we need to do is to input it inside of our class. So thanks to this add require ask constructor annotation, I can do this. I can do private funnel and import the employee item processor. I just call it employee item processor like so. So with this, it will be automatically auto wired, and it will be using the constructor injection instead of the regular auto wire thing. So this is much cleaner and it looks nice. Next, we need to also define the item writer. All right, so I'll show you how to do that in a second. All right, so same as we did for the item processor, I would like to also create. I like to normally also create the item writer in a new class as well, so we don't have that contested batch config class. All right, so I'll just create a new class and I'll call it employee item writer. All right, so this will be good. It's also going to be a component like so, and this, it needs to also implement the item writer class, and it's going to take a type that is going to be expecting. So this only takes an input. All right, so the input will be of type employee, because if you look at our output here, the processor, we are taking in an input of employee from the writer. Okay, this writer class is going to be giving out reading a file and then converting the object to an employee, pass it to the processor. The processor will receive that employee object, process it, and returns an employee object. So the type that will be returning here should be always the type that you will be expecting from this item writer. So in our case, it's just employee. Okay, so let's implement the method associated, and that is the write method. So here you can do all types of things. All right, you can do all types of things. You receive the write object will receive a chunk of data. of type employees. So it could be anything that extends the employee class, and then it will process them in bulk. So in our case, what we'll be doing here is we'll be saving it to our database. But you could do a lot of things. You could send an email from here. You could like run a mass campaign, email campaign. You could send you can stream it to a message broker. You could do a lot of things. So what we'll be doing here is straight up, we're just gonna be saving it to our database. So for that, we're gonna need our repository, which is this employee repository that we defined earlier. So I'm just gonna add the add require args constructor, and then inject that repository here. So to private funnel, employee repository, this one, like so. I hope I got it right. I'll just import this. Now we have our repository injected in this writer class. Next thing we need to do is to save, of course. So we will call the employee repository, not employee repository, but just repository, this one. And then we'll call the save all method on it. So we will now grab this chunk object here and get all the items inside of it. So it will work like this. We'll say chunks dot get items. So this will return to us a list of employee objects, which is compatible for saving, in the repository. So just add this here and we will be good. Now this will return nothing because it's a writer. It's just going to write. Okay. We are all set with this now. So we have our batch config, we have our item processor class, we have our item writer class. So this tool is set up. Next, we will come back to the batch config class and define the actual batch. We are set to start defining our batch job. But before we do that, we need to define one thing, which is the step. So every batch job has several steps. So steps are actions that will happen successively. So each step in the batch job contains 3 actions: it reads data, it processes data, and it writes data. So we've already defined these actions already in the previous steps that we were doing. We define our item reader here in the batch class itself, and then we define our item processor and the item writer. So now we need to define the step for this, the step that we use those. Okay, so the step can be defined as a bin, and we just it will be a public class, so it will be public step. The step should come from Spring Batch Core, this first one there, and they will call it employee job step. Not the best of name, but or we just say import employees step. All right, I think this will do. So this step will be responsible for importing our employees. So it could read it from the data from the file, process it, store in the database. So maybe we could have another step that will be responsible for taking it from the database and then sending an email or doing some other actions. And they have another step that will pick it up from the other side, and just like that. You get the idea. There's a step thing, but for each step you have a reader, a processor, and a writer. So our step here is going to take a few arguments. So the first argument it will take is the job repository, like so, and then it needs to also take an object of type platform transaction manager. So I'll just add that here, platform transaction manager, not platform. What is this? This one. Okay, let me close this so that we can have room. This platform transaction manager, we're just going to call it transaction manager, and then I think that's all we need so far. Next we have to then return, because it's a batch, it's a bin, we need to return an instance of the step, excuse me, and the instance of the step we return would be a new step builder. So we need to return a new step builder so we can use the builder pattern. So we return a new step builder so that we can use it to build the step. So in the step builder, we'll pass in two arguments. We'll pass in the name of the step. As you can see here, my thing is suggesting it's already name. So I'm just gonna call it employees import employee step, okay, and then we'll pass in the job repository, this one here. Then next we can now chain the rest of the thing. I like to end it with the build first and then come inside of it and start chaining things. Next we have to pass in a chunk. Okay, remember the item writer will receive data as chunks, so we need to read we need to process this data as chunks. Okay, so this step will process data as chunks, so it will be a chunk of employees object, and the output will also be employee, and then we just put the chunk thing here, and then we define the number, the size of the chunk. Okay, so let's say we'll be taking it 10 at a time. So next we need to pass the transaction manager to manage the transactions for us, just in case if something goes wrong or stuff like that. So now that this is set up, we need to also pass in the reader, from where to get the data. So for the reader, we already have defined our reader here. I'm just gonna grab it and put it in like so. I'm not grabbing it properly. Command C, I just paste it here and pass it in like so. All right, so our reader is set up. If you guess it right, next is the processor. So for the processor, we already defined it here, so we need to inject it in the class here. So we already done that. I'm just going to use the processor that we have here. All right, so just do this, and the last one, we need the writer. And for the writer, I've not yet injected, so let me just do that right now. Final employee item writer, this one, like so. So I will be able to use that now here. Awesome. So with this being set up, our step is ready. So based on this step, we can now go ahead and create a job. So remember, a job can have more steps. It can have multiple steps. You can have step 1, step 2, step 3. You know, all of them have their individual item reader, item processor, and item writers. So we just keeping everything simple here just to show you how it works. Okay, so now with this step, we'll define. Awesome. So if you're enjoying this video up to now, smash that like button. Give us your thoughts so far in the comment section, and if you have not yet subscribed, consider doing so. Awesome. So now let's go ahead and create our job. So the job, we'll just create a bin. So we'll define a bin of type job from Spring Batch. So it's gonna be public job, like so, and in that job we just call it import employees job. I think there should be one E, double E, and one S. Awesome. So this will also take some arguments. It will take the job repository, it will take the job repository as well as the step that it needs. Okay, so for the step, it will be this step that we have here. But what you could do also is that you could qualify it. Probably you have lots of steps within your batch application. So what you could do is you could give this bin a name, like so, and I'm just gonna call it import employees step, like so. So now with this name, I can qualify my my injection here. Okay, so I can do this thing like with add qualifier and specify the exact bin that I want, like so. So whenever it's injecting this step inside of this inside this method, it will find this specific one, the one that I specify here. So that's a good way to avoid conflict. Okay, so now I can just call it step, you know, and that's the only arguments we need. Next, we need to return a new job builder, and not like so. We need to return a new job builder, um, job builder like so, and I'll just import this like so, and then the name of the job should be the name that you will specify here. Tab9 just punch it in for me right there. Super cool. So next, you need to pass in as the second argument the job repository. Awesome. So with this two setup, let me just close the build thing first, and like so. You can now connect the other things that you need. You need to set up an incrementer. So an incrementer will help you, like it's like an ID for the job. Okay. So for that we use an object that is called run item run run incrementer, um, run ID incrementer. This one. So this run ID incrementer will be useful for, you know, each time our job runs, it will increment the IDs. So next, we need to specify the flow. So the flow is like the step how things will go, the order of things in the in the in the in the job itself. Okay, how things will go from what step to what step to what step. So basically, this flow here we have just one step in our job. So basically, we're just going to specify that step. But if you have multiple steps, you can specify those as well. So just going to pass in the step that we have here, that we have injected here, and then we can end the whole thing like so. You could pass in more arguments to this job builder. If you look at the job builder class here, it has lots of things that you could pass into it. This is the constructor. I think when you look at the, I'm not sure. I think no, not this one. Not testing. Um, Somewhere you can look at the implementation. I'm not sure actually, but there are other things that you can pass in here. Like for example, you could pass in the listener. You could pass in a listener that will listen to events when this job is executed or when this job is completed, and based on specific stats, you can perform certain type of actions. Like for example, you could set up a listener that will listen to when the job completes, and when the job completes, you want to maybe do something else. But I will not be doing that in this demo, so we'll just skip it for now. All right. So our job is set up. Our steps are all configured. Our processors, our writers, and the item reader is all straight up. Everything is configured as it should be. Now we will go ahead and write how we can start the batch. Okay, so by default, when you start your application, Spring Batch natural behavior is to start the batch application automatically. But most likely, most often, you don't want that to be the case. You want your batch application or your batch job to be triggered, by a scheduler at a specific time, or by an endpoint. That is, you want it to be triggered when the user need to trigger it. You want to have like basically control over your batch job. Don't want it to run, once your application gets started. You want it to run, at a specific interval. So to disable that default behavior, you can do so by coming over to the application.yaml file and add a few properties to the Spring thing. And then the one you will add um, is the Spring Batch. So Spring Batch. On the Spring Batch, you can specify your how do you call it? your job enable thing. This one right here, this one. So this is the guide that is responsible for the configuration that is responsible for starting or not starting automatically your batch job. So by default it is true. So we want to change it to false so that our batch job will now run when we just start the application. You can do that if you want, but let's just keep it as so for now. And also, while we're here already, I would like to also specify the JDBC part. So JDBC, this is the batch schema. So you can allow the framework to initialize the schema for you. So instead of you going ahead to write all those tables and things that you need to run the job, it's so hectic. You don't want to do that. Allow the framework to do it for you. So we just let it to be always so that the framework will automatically, create the tables and all the database objects that it needs to run the job. Okay, so this is basically all the configuration that we need to do here. And when you start the application and this is false, nothing will happen. So when this is true, once the application gets booted up, the batch job will automatically kick in and start running. All right. So we'll try both ways. So we'll run the batch job first with this being set to true, and then after that we'll disable it and then run it by a trigger. Okay. All right, so with this setup now we can run our batch application and it should automatically start the batch job once the application is up. But we have some issues. We have some red errors here and it's pointing us to the web and the demo controller. As if you can remember, we did not create this batch service class, so that's why we have this issue. So while we're here, let me just create it right away and then get rid of that error. So I will just create a new Java class and I'll put it in a package called services that, and then I'll paste the name here and I will add this like so. And that error is gone, but we should still have some problem, which is this method. I'll just create this method also. And here I'll return, normally this method should return nothing. Let's see. Okay, it returns a string. So I'll just return a string. And for now, I'll return, just null. Okay, just so that we don't have any issues. So for now, we are set. I will just go ahead and run the application and automatically the Docker Compose support will bootstrap my this thing. So first we have an issue. Let's see what is the issue here. Okay, batch service could not be found. Okay, let's see if we can debug this quickly. Let's go to our web layer. We have batch service here. And why is saying we need to annotate this with @service annotation and it should now be fine. So that's what we forgot about. Let's try it again. Okay, so now things seems to be working as expected. So I'll walk you through the logs and show you what happened. Okay, so a lot of things went down. Yeah, so now what you see here is that our application started up as usual, and at this point the Docker Compose support automatically started creating our container, our Postgres container that we defined in the compose.yaml file. And after setting that up for us, it makes sure it's healthy before it left start the application, because our application depends on that database server, that container. So it makes sure that it is set up and it's healthy before it starts the application itself. So the application went on and started up correctly. After that, Flyway kicked in and then did its thing, applied our schema. You see here, successfully validated one migration. And after Flyway did its thing, the Hikari pool kicked in and then connected our the Spring Data JDBC driver did its thing, connected to the database. After that, the job automatically started. So you see, we did not click a button to start the job, or a timer was not set. It just kicked in automatically. So you can see that it went through and started the job and started logging this log that we passed in the thing. It processed the first employee, second employee, third employee, and so forth. So this is all the employees that it read from the thing, and it processed them, saved them in the database. See that? This is coming from this log that we did right here. This login that we did right here. So you can see, it's the same thing, processing employee and then the name of the employee, first name and the last name. So basically our bash job is working correctly. So what we're gonna do now is to turn the automatic behavior off. So we can switch this to false. And then we now need to define a manual way of triggering the bash job. So now to manually trigger our bash job, what we do is that we'll start from a controller. We'll define an endpoint, this endpoint that I showed you earlier. And then when a user call this endpoint slash bash slash start, it will automatically go through the thing and then call a method called start job on this bash service class. So this start job method is not yet fully implemented. So what we'll do is we'll implement it in this scene and then test it out. So to start the bash job, you firstly need your job launcher report interface. So it is an interface called job launcher. It's a bin that you can inject in your classes, in your components. So I will just input that here using let me add the add require as constructor so that we can have that easy implementation of the login. So I will do the private final thing, private final job launcher. I call it job launcher, and then we need to also inject in the job that we want to to start. Okay, so for that we just inject in our job. So our job in this case we have just one job. If you look at our batch config, we have configure only one job. So when I call for a job, an object of type job, it will return to me only this one. But if you have multiple job, you can qualify it, and or you could use other techniques to call the specific bin that you want. So you can give this bin a name and then you call it. But we're not gonna complicate our lives since we have only one. So just do private funnel. You call in the job that we want, and then we just call it import employees job. Okay, this could be any name, but just to keep it nice. Now that we've done with the AutoWire thing, the injection, we will now need to start the job. But to start the job first, we need some parameters. So you can pass in some parameters to the job. Either you pass in a job parameter that is empty or not. So there's an object called job parameters. Job parameters. This job parameters is going to allow you to add some maybe extra information to your job that your job needs. So our job really don't need any extra information. So what we'll do is I'll just call this object job parameters, and it will be equals to a new job parameters object, and then I will just add let me just show you how to add a parameter. Okay, so to add a parameter you can do add I think it's like this, dot add long. Oh yeah, right, I'm missing something here. The job parameters builder is what we need. I'm always missing the builders part. So now I can do add long. So this long thing will be like the type of parameter I want to add. So the name will be the key, rather will be the name of the job, of the parameter, the key, like it's like a map, right? Key and the value. So I'll just call this time. Let's say our job needs this information, and then I'll just grab it from somewhere. So in this case, I just grab from system the current milliseconds. Okay. So you can add as many as you need. in your job. After all, they just do two job parameters. So this I don't really need in my job that we in the job that we created, but I'm just showing you that you can add parameters to job. So this job parameters object you can then pass in when you launch the job. So to launch the job, you call in your job launcher. This one that you define up here. So job launcher dot and then you call the run method. It has a lot of methods. So one of them is run, and the run method will take in the name of the job you want to run, or the job itself, job object, which is this, and then pass in the parameters. So if your job does not really need any parameter like mine, I can pass in no, but I just wanted to show you that you can add some parameters to it as well. So I'll just copy this parameters object and paste it here, close this. Now this is good, but we need to put some exceptions, okay? So you can do this one of two ways. You can either use try catch, or you can add it to the meta signature. So if you add it to the meta signature, you need to have a global exception handler. So if you don't know how to handle exceptions globally, I have a video that I've made explaining in detail how to handle exceptions within your application. Okay, so I'll try to link that in the description. You can check it out. Now, what I'll do is I'll just throw it at the meta signature. So I'll add exceptions to the meta signature, like so. So with this being set up, everything is good. So when no problems occur, I want to return a message to the caller that your batch job has started successfully. All right. So this is all good. But if something happened, of course, they will see an exception in their client. So now this is set up. Also here we need to okay, it's already added. Awesome. The IntelliJ ID is a beast. So we have now set up a way to trigger our batch job using an endpoint. So let's go ahead and test it out and see if it works. Alright, so now we have all our things set up. Let's start our application and see the behavior. So everything is starting up normally, and awesome. So it went through the regular flow, created the containers, started the application, run the flyway database schema, and then connected the application. Everything went all well. It happened in 3.78 seconds. But our batch job did not start, which is the behavior that we want. So now to start the batch job, we need to call an endpoint that will initiate that procedure. So what I've done now is I've set up in Postman an endpoint that I configure to start the batch job. Okay, so it's a request that is going to localhost 801 and batch/start. So I will post this request to that, and once it works fine, the batch job should start. So I'll send this, and you can see here batch job has started successfully. So let's check the logs, and if you look at the logs, you can see now that our job started, it ran, it completed, and everything worked fine. You see this all the information that it managed to read from the CSV file, and it managed to save it to our database. So everything went through, the whole process executed in 472 milliseconds, and the entire process completed in less than 5 seconds. Okay, so now this is the behavior that we wanted, and our batch job has started up successfully. So you could also set a timer. You could use the Spring scheduler to schedule when this batch job should run, maybe every 10 minutes, every 1 hour, every day at 5 o'clock. There's no limit to how far you can push this. You can build all sort of application that can simplify your life and the lives of your team, save you guys a bunch of time, and give you the developer experience you always wanted. So batch applications are really, really useful. You will in your life as a developer, you will have to build a batch application one way or the other. So I hope this video gave you an idea of how to build a batch application. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you got some value from this. Like this video, share with your friends. Until then, catch you in the next one. Bye bye.